So we're talking about customer equity as being a future-looking measure. Let's talk about the future of the measure. So where do you see customer equity going? Again, beyond the way we calculate it, that will get better as we get better data. But the use of the metric and how commonly firms are reporting it or investors demanding it, where do you think we're going to be with customer equity, say, 5 years from now?
I would say in 5 years, or let's say in 10 years from now, I'm pretty sure most analysts will ask for those customer metrics. So that's the number one statement. The number two statement is that most companies will use it to determine the current value of the customer base. And the third statement will be, so far we have been talking about the current customer base. If you think about it that way, that a company, essentially the value is generated because customers come, unfortunately some go, but customer leaves some money for your product on the table. That's essentially revenue. You have some cost for generating those revenues. So essentially, if you sum it up, all the profits that you can generate with those customers, that should be something like shareholder value or market capitalization. So what we have done so far, we just looked at the current customer base. Now you might say, yeah, but you're going to acquire new customers in the future. And I say, yes. What you need to do to come up with something like shareholder value, you need to predict how many customers are going to acquire, what will be their value, and you essentially sum up the current customers, all the future customers. You need to do some appropriate discounting because some of those things are happening in the future. You need to determine the current value, and then you have what I call customer equity of current and future customers. And that's when you take into account the financial structure, that's very, very close to shareholder value, and we have actually shown that you can properly evaluate companies upon those metrics.
And beyond an academic exercise where we can show a rough equivalence between summed up customer equity and overall corporate value, do you think we'll get to a point where commercial firms are actually doing that on a regular basis, that kind of bottom-up valuation?
Yeah, I mean, right now some analysts that focus on telecommunication companies, they are supposed to do that. I haven't seen too much detailed information. I'm not quite sure whether they do it properly. For example, I had a conversation with one of the analysts some time ago, and I was kind of surprised that he told me he thought that a company must be worth a lot because they are spending so much on acquiring a customer. I mean, that's obviously a good idea to say, okay, if they spend a lot of money on acquiring customer, very likely their customer should be worth a lot. However, the appropriate issue would be to really think about how much money they generate with the customer. And in that particular case, what I did, I had a look at the financial statement. I did some kind of back-on-the-envelope calculations, and I actually figured out that there's no way that they can make so much money with the customer as they spend for acquiring them. So I was a bit of surprised, and my prediction was in a sense right, that this company didn't perform too well on the stock market. So I'm pretty sure that those kinds of heuristics that are currently used, they will be dropped, and we will move to a more serious maybe not academic, but more profound evaluation where you just ask the company, how much money do you make with one customer? How long are they going to stay? I mean, if you know how much money you can make with one customer, you get a pretty good idea how much you can spend on acquisition. So that's not too difficult.
So there's a lot of room for improvement today, but it sounds like a bright future for those who are willing to think about, learn about, and implement customer equity ideas. Is there anything else for the future that where you think it's going to change business practices?
Well, first of all, I think as you do here in Wharton, I mean, as professors, we need to put much more emphasis on teaching that stuff. We will have bright students. Bright students will implement it in practice. So that's one issue where we have to do more. And so far, even among the academics, those kind of ideas are not too well developed. And personally, I would like to spend more time in the future on transferring that knowledge from more the academic part into companies, into practice.
And as a professor, I share that desire, and I'm hoping that conversations like this will help move that academic practitioner conversation forward. And I want to thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Pete, for inviting me.